when you share of yourself, when you share that personal stuff that you don't want to talk about, that you're embarrassed about, and someone reads it, they will connect to it. And so you're helping them. And the more intimate you are, the more you share of yourself, it's a selfless thing to do, to share yourself, because then that's how people connect with you. If you don't do that, if you keep that wall up, you're not doing your job, and you're not helping somebody by keeping that wall up. You're listening to Screenwriters Need to Hear This with Michael Jamin. Hey everyone, I'm Michael Jamin. I'm here with Phil Hudson, and we're here for Screenwriters Need to Hear This, the podcast. Hey Phil.
What's up, everyone? How's it going, Michael?
It's going good. We got a special episode today. I always say that every time. It's always special.
I know.
But
I think this is going to be a fun one because I think it's something that's become kind of popular in your social media comments. But before we do that, we just got a really cool review that I think is, do you mind if we share that? I think it really highlights what I've been saying about the course this entire time.
Yeah, I mean, what was funny is I was doing, I think it was an Instagram Live, or it was either TikTok or an Instagram Live. Just as only like 2 days ago. And I had a free half hour, so I went on live. And so one guy was asking me, he was just asking me questions about the course. Like, I mentioned the course, and he asked me questions like, hey, can I pay for it in 6 payments? I was like, no, we can only do 3 payments because that's just how the processor is set up, that, the software we have. And he was like, I'm on the fence because it's not inexpensive. So he's on the fence. I was like, all right, well, if you decide, welcome. If you're not, if you need more time, all right, that's cool too, whatever you want. And so I'm doing more of I'm talking, I'm just answering questions. And then he leaves another comment and he's like, hey, I just bought the course. And I'm like, oh, all right, cool. Welcome to the course. I'll make sure you sign up for the private Facebook group. He goes, yeah, I will. No, great. And I'm answering more questions. Then less than 24 hours later, this guy, his name is Steven, he goes by Mustafa. He left less than 24 hours later. He texted me a comment on Instagram.
You mean he messaged you? I don't want people thinking he got your phone. Your cell phone is not available to students.
No, I'm ignorant. No, he direct messaged me on Instagram, and he says, "Hi, Michael. So I purchased your course last night to see if I can get past my writer's block on my pilot that I've struggled with since the beginning of this year. And just after watching your first 4 videos, I've got a clear and precise story laid out. So excited to say that I got my emotional logline and book report done, and now I'm ready to start my outline. I honestly can't thank you enough for making this course. You are a gift to us all." And then a bunch of prayer emojis. So, which is really nice. And he's only been on the first 4 videos. I mean, I have...
there's like 28 modules in there or something like that, plus a bunch of bonus stuff. I mean, there's hours and hours of content in there. But right. I think that highlights exactly what I've been saying on these podcasts. It is the thing that I wished I had 10 years ago. And if I was able to have this resource, which is lifetime access, and once you buy it, it's yours forever. There's no timeline. You can watch it in your own pace. Had I done that, my career would have been a little bit different. I think right now I'd be in a different place.
You'd be a little, yeah, probably. It's because I run it the way we run a writer's room, which is like, hey, someone pitch an idea. Okay, well, let's figure out if it's a good idea or a bad idea, and let's break it. Let's figure out how to break the story. So it's kind of like, how it is. It's not a lot of theory. I just jump right into it, and this is how we do it.
That's the comment most people say about your social media is like, thank you for being so real. Because there's a lot of people selling the dream out there. And that's something from the beginning. When I would ask you to do this, you said, I can't do it because I don't want to promise people the dream. I don't want to sell them the dream. And that's a lot of people who, you had an interesting comment from somebody else who was quite upset the way you were talking about teachers. And then lo and behold, he's a teacher who wants to be a writer. And he felt you were being very offensive by the way you talk about it. But, teachers teach, and some teachers are very good, and they also teach. But they're the exception to the rule, right? You are a writer who teaches, not a teacher who writes. And
he got really upset, but I was like, all right, well, move on, dude. You don't have to follow me.
Shorten to the point. So anyone who's interested in taking the writing to the next level, again, go sign up for the course, michaeljamin.com/course. You'll thank yourself for it. It's that good. And we got a great group in the Facebook group that will read your stuff, send you notes, and they're all thinking about it the same way that professional writers are thinking about it. So I found that the notes I get in that group are far better than notes I have from friends I went to film school with. Yeah.
The quality because we have a private Facebook group just for students, and the quality of the students, I think, is very high. Like how they think about story. It's a great group, I think. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, we digress. Let's dive
Yeah.
into this exciting episode.
Today's episode is called "When Good Shows Go Bad," and it was basically a response to a number of comments that people questions people leave, like, "Why do the shows suck after a few years?" And what happens? What's that about? So I just thought, here's my take on it, on why good shows go bad. First of all, people they always accuse the writers, which is normal. You lazy writers, why can't they get better writers? And like, which is a little odd. Like, if the show started out good, chances are it's the same writers who are continuing on the show. So it's not like they got worse. The writers didn't get worse and didn't get lazy. There's just something about creating doing a TV show that it's inherently made not to. It can't last forever. It just cannot. There's not by design. So it's not laziness. It's in everyone's best interest, the actors, the writers. It's in everyone's best interest to keep the quality of the show high, because that way they buy another season and then we make more money. It's like, you want the show to be good so you can do more of it. Mm-hmm. And we're not inherently lazy people. It's not like we're not in it for the money. We're in it to be creative. And it's interesting, like, there are products that I buy, that I get stupid enough to buy, that are made by companies that are in it for the money. Like, and the example is that I had to buy a charger for my phone, and a good charger is kind of expensive, and then you see like a cheap one for a couple bucks, and you go, yeah, it's got a white cord. Why don't you just buy that one? It's for a couple bucks.
But it charges it slower, it breaks, it falls apart, the life expectancy goes away. I have this conversation with my wife all the time, where I grew up very poor, and so my dad would buy as economically as possible. Mm-hmm. But then you sit down and you do the math. When you're buying jeans at Walmart, you're going to buy them over and over again because they're going to fall apart faster, as opposed to going and buying something that has 3 times the price tag, but it's going to last 6 times as long. You're going to get more life out of the higher end product.
But the company that makes that crappy charger, like, they're in it for the buck. They just want that buck from you. Right. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't think that's the case with We're not trying to steal money from you. That's not why we're doing it. We're trying to delight you. That's our goal. Can we delight you every week, week in and week out? Because that's what we want. We're not, if I wanted to get rich, I'd probably make cheap chargers. That's the line of work I would probably go into.
Yeah.
So we want the quality to be good. I think we can agree on that. But the problem is with each story that we tell, that's one less story there is to tell. And so, and by that I mean, like, I don't mean stories like plot. I'm talking about emotional stories, like exploring the emotional stories underneath each. And so, like, there's certain character dynamics, and you'll run out of those stories eventually. And so, you try to create. That's why you often introduce new characters, or that's why you'll have a character arc, because that'll stir the pot, and now there's new emotional territory to explore. But eventually, you run out of that as well. And so that's kind of why. That's the problem with that. That's why the quality goes. It's like, we've already done that, and so you're trying to constantly search for new things to do, and that's really, really hard.
I was going to say, there's an economic law or principle that applies to this. It's the law of diminishing returns, right?
Uh-huh.
The definition, a principle stating the profits or benefits gained from something will represent a proportionally smaller gain as more money or energy is invested in it. Mm-hmm. So literally what you're saying is, the more time and energy you put into a show, the return has to taper off because of this principle. You run out of material.
You just run, and it's unfortunate. And by the way, when we do introduce a new character, or like we make an arc, like maybe they send the character to college, or we'll get them married, or get them divorced, or a new job, we're changing the DNA of the show. We all get that. And so the people who are watching it, the fans, are like, wait a minute, that's not the show I signed up for. I don't want this new character. I don't want them to be in college now, or whatever. And it's like, I get we're changing the DNA. We're trying to put a little more life into the show. Sometimes it makes it better. Sometimes it makes it worse. Cheers did it. Friends, they would do it. And they did it quite successfully. They'd have this couple, they would start dating, and then the other characters would start dating each other. And like, everyone had to date each other but somehow they made it, they still were able to breathe interesting life into it, but it was not easy. It's hard to do. And then the other question that I got, and they're kind of like, they're related. Like, someone left a question, was like, well, why as the show goes on, why do characters get stupid? Why do they get more broad? Why do they get more two-dimensional? What's that about? And it's a similar thing. It's like, when you working with these characters, you have a trait that, and you explore that the trait everyone loves. Let's say the main character's trait is they're deeply insecure, and that manifests itself by bullying people. And so that's fun to write. That's fun to watch. It's funny. It's great. Danny McBride is a great example of that. He always plays characters that are like he's deeply insecure and he's a jerk because of that. And it's always fun. Like no one does that color better than Danny McBride. He's terrific. But once you explore it, once you keep doing it, doing it, it's like, well, you got to come up with something else. So you have to kind of top yourself. And we've already seen that. And so we get to a point. Well, first we explore all that. For example, so we'll explore what it's like when when an insecure guy meets someone who's more insecure than him. What happens then? Does he bully him? Does he take him under his wing to become his acolyte? Okay, what happens when that insecure character meets a bigger bully? Does he stand up to him? Does he back down? What happens when he goes on a first date? Is he able to keep his insecurities in check, or do they come out? We'll explore all that. But eventually you kind of run out of things to explore with that character trait, you know? And so the writers get to a crossroad. And the question is, well, do we make this character grow? Do we make them kind of evolve as a person? Do we pull them back? But if we do that, we're taking away what makes them funny. We're taking away what the audience loved about him in the first place, which was this deep insecurity. And if you do pull them back and make them more secure, that's not as fun. That's not as fun to write. It's not good for story because healthy characters making smart, wise, emotionally wise decisions was not good drama. Watching people make mistakes, that's good drama, right? Mm-hmm. So if you take that away, if you have the character evolve, that's not good for story. So now you can push them in the other direction. You can say, okay, you're going to take this insecure person, let's make them even more insecure. Let's double down, right? You can do that, but then you definitely run the risk of sending that character to Crazy Town. You're making them more two-dimensional, and you're taking this asset that works and you're kind of making them too stupid or too whatever. And so the writers, we're aware of this. We understand that there's going to be a natural descent of the character or of the show. So the goal is to slow it down as much as possible. Let's not go to Crazy Town yet. We're going to get there. So let's just make that happen as slow as possible. And milk it as much too, so we don't have to. A lot of times you'll be in a writer's room and someone will pitch an idea and the showrunner will say, okay, that's a season 5 idea. That's not a season 2 idea. We're not there yet. Let's not go to Crazy Town yet. And so, these are the things we struggle with, and we're aware of it. It's just kind of the nature of writing for television. It's not meant to last forever. And so it's going to break down. It's not because we're lazy. We definitely want to delight you. That's why we got into the business. And so that's kind of what that's all about. Questions, Phil?
Yeah, a couple came to mind. One example of this that I'm thinking about is the show Lost, which was like a cultural phenomenon. Everyone watched Lost in the early 2000s. And, about season 3, they were begging the network to give them a cancellation time because they got stuck in this rut where they felt they couldn't progress their story any further until they knew when it was going to end.
Yeah.
And Damon Lindelof, has an interview where he famously talks about this. Like, you get to the point where you're writing about Jack's tattoos and how he got his tattoos because you're just starving for content because they couldn't progress their story in the main arc until they knew where they were going to go, when it was going to end. And so they pushed and pushed for that end date, and they finally got it. And then people still didn't understand the ending and hated it. And I'm not one of them. I quite liked it and understood what they were going for. But that's one example that I thought of as you were saying that. In terms of questions, though, one of the things that really stood out to me is you're talking about, what happens if an insecure person meets someone who's more insecure than them? And so what you're really describing here is just general psychology and human behavior. Mm-hmm. How much time have you put into really analyzing that from an educational perspective versus just an observational? I'm a human and I deal with these people all day.
Yeah, I mean, it's just human stuff. I didn't go to school. I didn't, go to psychiatry school. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Like, do you spend time reading about attachment theory and the way we interact with our relationships versus are you actually just saying, I've got this friend and I know my friend, so I know he's super insecure and he had this interesting experience where we ran into someone we both know who's also more insecure than him, and it was so interesting watching those two kind of compete for attention.
Yeah. I mean, I'm more of that camp. I mean, I had a writing teacher say, you get yourself into therapy. And I was like, but why? I'm fine. And I wasn't, but I said why. I said that. But if you once you're in therapy, like this is what you discuss. You try to figure out what makes yourself tick. And then it makes it as you get older for sure, you're able to distance yourself and say, oh, these are my bad behaviors or and then it's easier to write for other characters. You have to understand yourself first before you can write for somebody else. So therapy is always good. If you can't afford therapists, there are actually probably pro bono places you can go or sliding scale places you can
I
go.
think during COVID, the U.S. government has a lot of resources in the mental health space available because of that. Because you're just
And it's
people
not that you're
working out.
crazy. It's just that help you understand yourself because that way it'll help
Yeah.
you understand other characters. To be observant of that, and that's part of the job of a writer is really just to kind of, to observe that. But sure, you could study, you could pick up a textbook that you could do that as well if that helps.
Mhm.
But it's really we're always just stealing. Writers are always stealing from ourselves or our friends or our families, and stuff like that. Hi guys, it's Michael Jamin. I wanted to take a break from talking and talk just a little bit more. I think a lot of you people are getting bad advice on the internet. Many of you want to break into the industry as writers or directors or actors, and some of you are paying for this advice on the internet. It's just bad. And as a working TV writer and showrunner, this burns my butt. So my goal is to flush a lot of this bad stuff out of your head and replace it with stuff that's actually going to help you. So I post daily tips on social media. Go follow me at Michael Jamin Writer. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. And let's be honest, if you don't have time, like just 2 minutes a day towards improving your craft, it's not going to happen. So go make it happen for you at Michael Jamin Writer. Okay, now back to my previous rant.
We've talked in other podcasts about like one of the first books I read was the memoir of Phil Rosenthal, You're Lucky You're Funny. And he talks
Mm-hmm.
about that. They would literally come in the writer's room Monday and say, all right, what fight did you get in with your wife?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what you're writing about is,
Right.
we fought about the luggage, which is something you talk about from
Yeah.
your show. I won an
Yeah.
Emmy because of that, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, okay, so you're really just analyzing and paying attention to other people. You're not. It doesn't really sound to me like you're spending a lot of time studying like Jungian archetypes and all
No.
these literary devices that people spend a lot of time paying attention to.
Yeah. No. I just see what's going on with my family, my in-laws, and I go, all right, that's going in a script.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm seeing in the writers' room. It literally will just be like, well, here's the one time this happened, and this is how it happened, and then people riff off of that about
mm-hmm.
that's the core. Sometimes the core ends up being what it is, and then other times the riffing makes it even more ridiculous, and that's what
Yeah.
ends up in there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
both are great to watch.
Yeah, we had that example that this week where the two showrunners, the two stars, were kind of talking about their past, and I just trying to look. That's going in, guys.
Yeah, just laughing. You're just in tears because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
this, that's one of the things that really stood out to me this week in the writers' room was just how important it is that writers get out from behind their computer and they just live a life, right?
mm-hmm.
And I remember that was a note I read really early on in my studies of screenwriting was, write what you know isn't I was a deli boy and so I should write about a deli, which
Right.
might also be the case, but it's really more like what has your life been? What experiences have you had? Like go
Yeah.
date someone, go get in a fight with somebody. What's it feel like to be punched in the face? What's it feel like to defend your friend in front of someone? What's it like
That's
to cower or not do the right thing? Right?
that's
writing,
why, and that's why, right? If you are interested in writing, like even if you think you'll never become a professional writer, saying that you're a writer, like studying writing and writing every day, now gives you license to do stuff that puts you out of your comfort zone. That's stupid things to go, on a date with someone you don't want to go on a date with, or to dive out of an airplane because you're like, well, I'll get a story out of this, and you will, And so it's like that's why it's so freeing to. That's why I say if you're interested in writing, start writing. It's good for you, even if you're not going to be go pro. That's okay. It doesn't, there's still value in it,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What other advice do you think people can? What other advice do you have for other people who are looking for ways to explore and expand their own personal experience. I mean, that might be a little broad for our conversation on the podcast, but I think that
Mhm.
is the core of what we're telling people. And we've had some really deep conversations here where a lot of people are like, I never expected listening to a screenwriting podcast I would spend so much time doing internal reflection about myself and my life, right?
Yeah,
But
good.
so I think it's kind of on point here, right? Which is the job of a writer is to explore those things, and that's what we watch. And I go back to when I was a kid in Tupelo, Oklahoma, hating my life, dealing with all the problems I was dealing with, and TV was an escape for me. It was a way to get out of that and just live someone else's life for a while. And that
Yeah,
was so important to me. That's what makes me want to be a writer.
yeah,
And I've done a disservice to myself and other people by not exploring the nuances of how I navigated those situations. And so,
yeah.
again, I'm rambling here, but I'm just wondering, is there specific any specific advice you have beyond that?
Well, when you share of yourself, when you share that personal stuff that you don't want to talk about, that you're embarrassed about, and someone reads it, they will connect to it, and so you're helping them. And the more intimate you are, the more you share of yourself. It's a selfless thing to do, to share yourself, because then that's how people connect with you. If you don't do that, if you keep that wall up, you're not doing your job, and you're not helping somebody by keeping that wall up. And so it's not really it's not narcissistic to be talking about yourself in that way. It's actually, if you do it the right way, it's very beneficial. It's very generous of you, because that's how
Mhm.
people connect. So um, don't be afraid of that. I guess if that's your goal is to write, share of yourself. That's what it's for. That's what you're doing. You're giving. You're not taking. You know.
Yeah, we've talked in the past about journaling. We've talked in the
Mm-hmm.
past about therapy. We've talked about meditation. We've
Mm-hmm.
talked about, one of the questions that you brought up is, what lies am I telling myself?
Yeah.
Right. All of those things, the introspection. One thing I think I'm noticing with myself, and I think applies to many people in my age, and I'm a millennial, but I'm also, my wife's 10 years younger than me, and she's a millennial, but she's really kind of a Gen Z. And I'm noticing these same trends that we do not want to be alone with our thoughts. We're not comfortable with that. And so we try to sedate with social media and with
Mm-hmm.
television and with film. And, I hear a lot of people in the personal development world say, turn off the TV. And like, that's hard for me because like it feels like that is kind of homework for me as a writer, is to know what people are writing about. But that doesn't mean it needs to be music or podcasts or video games or something else running 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
There it is important to sit with yourself for an hour and question, what am I feeling and thinking, and observe
I'm
that.
more at peace. I talk about this little, I'm doing this collection of personal essays that when it comes out, I'll be on here every 10 seconds talking my book. It's called The Paper Orchestra. And I have been more at peace with myself since I've started that book since than when I was before. I honestly am more at peace. I'm just easier to be around. And it's because I understand myself more. And it's because the process of writing uh, just calms me down. It lets me explore, and I don't have to keep it in anymore. Just, hey, this is what it is. And people enjoy it and they can relate to it, and it helps them. It's just, I don't know. I'm more, it's a meditation, doing all
Mhm.
that. So,
Yeah. It's
and
Marcus Aurelius's book Meditations were just his personal collections of him meditating about his days, and those
yeah,
have profoundly helped millions and millions of people since he was here thousands of years ago. Right.
yeah, yeah. So, and another thing, I may have mentioned this before. It's like some people think, well, what if I study writing and I write all the time, and then after 5 years, I still don't sell my script or whatever. I don't get a job on a show or whatever. What a waste. And it's like, why is it a waste? Like, you spent all this time writing, you enjoyed the process of writing, you enjoyed it. How is it a waste? Like, you
Mhm.
grew from it. Why? Because there's no money attached to it. It's not a waste. It's like that's how
Mhm.
you blossom as a person. And I forgive if I know I mentioned this before, but not everyone listens to everything I say, so I'm going to say it again. There's, we live near an outdoor sports complex, and these people play every day. They play on the weekends. These people are 30, 40, 50 years old, and they play in the leagues. They play softball and soccer and
Mhm.
whatever, and they have uniforms. They take it seriously. They have tryouts, and none of those people are going pro. None of them are. they just play and they take it seriously because they enjoy it and they get a lot of they get a lot out of it. It's the same thing with writing. Like if you so what if you don't go pro? Does that mean you shouldn't do it? It's the same thing as playing tennis all the time or taking golf lessons to improve your game. Why? You're not going to go pro. Why would you do that? Well, because that's how you get better and you enjoy your life more. You know.
It's that, when I started playing golf in high school, like I'm not good. Like I'm not good at all. But I found myself getting very frustrated, and I started noticing, like, if someone was waiting for me, I would feel very anxious and I would want to just speed through. And I learned so much about myself in those moments. It's like, okay, I'm super competitive with myself. And I think that's a
Mhm.
good thing because it means I want to be better and I want to
Right.
master anything I do. I don't think that's a bad thing. But why do I feel so anxious when I feel like I'm a burden to other people? Why do I feel like I paid the same green fees to be here?
Right.
I'm waiting on someone else. Like we're all waiting. It's
Right.
nothing to do with me.
Right.
But I feel anxious because they're waiting on me, right? And so it forces you to kind of look through those things. And I think anything that challenges you or that can be a challenge is a good thing. You talk about how writing for writing's sake is meditation. Being
Yeah.
creative and being centered and being focused is the act of being present. And you're not stressed about the life and everything else that's going on there. And I think that's a beautiful thing that in and of itself makes writing worth it, or golf, or being a professional video game player for that matter, whatever it is you decide to do as a
And
vocation.
that's an interesting character trait to give to a character, someone who feels insecure, feels like they should hurry up, even though the people before them didn't hurry up, and even for that's interesting. Like, what? Who's that guy?
This is, oh man, I'm a nut. Like I told you this, and no one steal this because I'm sure I'll put it in something one day. One time I went to Disneyland with my wife. I wasn't even with my wife. I think it was with some friends, and I had to use the restroom. So I went into the stall and I closed the door and I sit down. I'm doing my business, and some guy opens the door, and I apologize to him. I'm so sorry. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry that
so
this just happened
sorry.
to you. You walked in on me,
Right.
but I'm so sorry to you.
And that's a great. That definitely is going in somewhere because that's
because
hilarious.
as you say, like this lunatic's going in my next script because
Yeah.
it's just like,
So
what is
when
it
you do
about me? I would apologize to that guy for walking in on me on this in the stall.
right, so what you do is you take notice of that when you do it. You make a note in your diary or whatever you keep notes. You bring it up to your therapist and you say, "Hey, why did I do this?" And then your therapist
Yeah,
helps you explore that, and you go, "Okay, thanks. I got a story. See you later." You got a
yeah,
story out of it. You know.
yeah. No, I
So
think that's a great note right there. Like that in
yeah,
and of itself is worth this whole podcast. The 20 something minutes you put into this podcast right now is that's your golden ticket.
yeah. I mean, there's you don't have to. Everyone has interesting stories, interesting features, characteristics about themselves, and it's narcissistic, obviously, just to talk about yourself. But if you can do, if you know how to, if you have a craft to it, then it's not narcissistic. It's you're sharing, and
Mm-hmm.
that's like I said, that's generous. So, but if you're just talking about yourself and you're talking about yourself in only flattering light, that is narcissism. So that's what Facebook is. When people post pictures of their vacation or their lunch or their
Mm-hmm.
cat or their award or their score or their Wordle, like that's narcissistic. Look at me. But if you share your weaknesses, then you're opening up. That's wonderful. And that's like, obviously, I know I've talked about this as well. That's the difference between Facebook and writing. Is like you're not really sharing anything on Facebook. When you do your
Mm-hmm.
writing, you are sharing. You're really you're giving of people. That's why people hate people on Facebook who brag or who humble brag. So
Mm-hmm.
talk about your weaknesses, talk about your foibles, your insecurities, put that in your writing, and then you have something great. You'll have something great. Pat yourself on the back, and no one's going to want to read your work. You know.
Mm. Yeah. I dated a girl who was a child therapist, and I made a self deprecating joke one time, and she said, "I don't like that," and
Hmm.
I thought about it, and I said, "But that is my way of killing the ego monster that I have because I know I
Uh-huh.
can be egotistical and stubborn, and so me pointing out my flaw
Right.
is hanging a hat on the fact that I am." Susceptible to human mistake just like other people because there are
Right.
definitely moments when I'm not willing to do that and that ego monster I have gets me in trouble.
And that's an interesting character dynamic for a romantic comedy. Like you guys just makes a comment like that, and his girlfriend says, "I don't like that." And you're, well, all right, what do I do with that now? What do I do with that? This is what I got. What do I do now? And then the
Yeah.
next scene, you don't share as much, and then next scene you're getting quiet.
Why are
I
you not
mean,
opening up? What's
yeah,
happened? Something's changed.
Yeah. So there's
Yeah.
like all that stuff in your life and everyone's life. Just as long as be conscious of it, put it into your work, you know?
And that's how you keep a series interesting, is embedding these new conflicts and moments that
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
can relate to.
And in the course, takes us back to the course, but I have the writing course, and one of the modules in it is mining your life for stories, and that's what we do. It's like, well, I kind of talk about how do I look at my life through the lens of, and I don't know how we got here. The topic was when good shows go bad, but we got here somehow. Is how do I look at my life, from a distance, and think, oh, that lunatic is going in my script, or my manuscript, or whatever. That's how do I find all these weird things from my life and turn it into a story, and they teach you how to do that as well, because everyone listening to it is a gold mine. Most of you think you're not. Most of you think you're boring. You have no idea how interesting you are, but you are. You just have to learn how to get it out. You just have to learn how to express it. The source, there's plenty of source material. We just have to teach you how to get it out. So.
Yeah, and we've talked about it as well, but I've had the luxury of attending the Sundance Labs many times, and I was a Redford scholar, so I got to go through this writing process, and it's a process by which you take instances and experiences from your life and embed them into your character to make your character more interesting and relatable, right? And this whole thing is, I read early on in my studies that I am not the protagonist. My protagonist is not me. They are not going to do things the way I do. Stephen King in On Writing says that if you ever are writing and you think I would never do that, good, you are not the character. The character will have its life of its own and do things. And I'm shocked by some of the things I write that I would never do, but my characters will do, right? And this is to say, the Sundance process really taught me you are not the protagonist, but you are all of your characters, right? They are. Right. This is you embedding your experiences, provides the richness and connection that the viewer will connect to.
Even Larry David says this on Curb Your Enthusiasm. Like, he plays himself, he plays Larry David, but he says, I don't do 90% of that stuff. It's stuff that I think about doing, but I keep myself in check.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to do. I wish I had done.
Yeah.
And that makes that's a really interesting character. So it's we all have it. Just be aware of it.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Mike. I think this is a very helpful podcast, and hopefully, I think, like you said, I don't know how we got to this point, but I mean, there's a very clear line, which is we write stories, we run out of these human emotional connections, and so writers change the dynamics to imbue them with more opportunities for these dramatic, realistic moments, and that's over time changes things. And this is how we do that. This is how we come up with those emotional ideas. But this, going back to even our last episode where we went over my script and we talked about, like, this is the stuff that was lacking, right? This is the interesting stuff.
Yeah,
the great stuff.
Yeah. We talked about that. Yeah, go listen to that. That's a good one. And I don't know if I mentioned, I hope I didn't. I know I repeat myself, but one show I recently watched that I just love is Somebody Somewhere. Did we talk about this on a podcast yet?
No, we didn't talk about this at all.
Oh, good. So I watched the show Somebody Somewhere on HBO because my friend Rob Cohn, who's a writer turned director, he directed a bunch of episodes, and he said, "Hey, watch my show." I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I'll watch your show." And the pilot, it was beautifully written, and it was so personal. And it's about a woman who I guess she's in her 40s and kind of like has like a loser life. She's kind of squandered the last 15 years of her life, and she goes back home. And this is the premise of the show. And so I'm not ruining everything. She goes back home and she befriends this gay guy who in high school knew her, who looked up to her, who adored her, but she didn't know he was alive because he thought she was the queen bee. She thought she was a star, and the beautiful girl, and she didn't even know he was alive. And then because it's because she was so insecure, she didn't even look at anybody. She was just like in her own little stuck little world. And then she goes back home and they form a friendship, and he sees her the way he remembers her, which is like this beautiful star. And she's so insecure, she thinks she's just this horrible loser. And that's the premise of the show. And it was so beautifully written. I didn't know anything. I didn't know the backstory about it at all. But after I watched it, I said to my wife, I was like, that had to have been based on a true story. There's so much in there that feels absolutely 100% true and unique and interesting. And if I were to write, I said to her, if I were to write this story, I would have screwed it up. I would have not have gone as deep as the person who wrote it, because it was all based on her life. It was all true. And so I would have written the bad version of this, and she wrote the good version. And it's because she lived it. And it just never occurred. It wouldn't have occurred to me. Like, if I were to write that story, I probably would have made her character the mean girl, the popular cheerleader in high school, who was, everyone loved the mean girl, the star, and she was like a bitch, but and she looked down on everybody. And then she comes back home, and she thinks she's all that. And she comes back home 15 years later and realizes she's wasted her life and she squandered it. Now she's being humbled. That's the version I probably would have written. And then in present day, she doesn't even remember being the bitch in high school, because that's how far she's fallen. She can't even identify with that person. But that's not the version of the show. In the show, when she was in high school, she wasn't the mean girl. She was just, an average, normal girl who, with very low self-esteem, who didn't even know, it wasn't like she was mean to people. She was only mean to her. She was mean to herself, which is so interesting. The fact that, so she wasn't humbled. She was always humble. She was always damaged, which is so interesting. Better than I think it's better than my version. Because I think I've seen my version, but her version, because it was taken from her life, the star's life, beautifully written. And it was only because she had the bravery to share, and the knowledge how to share it, the bravery to share it, and also the knowledge on how to share it, how to lay out a story. So go watch that. Really good.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll check that out too. Thanks, Michael. Again, I think it's a really good stuff here. And, I just want to thank you personally for all the great stuff. I know myself as a writer, I've grown tremendously just doing the podcast with you.
Yeah.
Excluding the stuff in the course, which definitely has helped me be more of a craftsman, just thinking about it professionally and understanding, even the question, why do shows go bad after 5 seasons, or what makes a good show bad? Well, that's someone who's not thinking about the core job of someone new, which is, how can I write something so good that it gets attention and gets me staffed on a show, which is, they're thinking about, how do I write a good series, not the one good episode, write the one pilot, right? Write a pilot that's good and get attention for that.
Yeah, just one episode. Start there.
You're the only person saying that. Everyone else is selling the dream and talking about how you can knock it out of the park and be that Cinderella story who makes it overnight. And yeah, that's just a path to insecurity and stress and pain, when really you could just have fun and really dive into yourself and embed your characters with you, and that's what's going to connect with someone and get you hired.
Yeah. Go check out the course, michaeljamin.com test course. We'll help you out.
Awesome. Other than that, watch list. I think the watch list is the other place.
Yes.
Michael, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So once a week, Phil had this idea where we send out our top content for actors, writers, and creatives, and it's free. And we send you an email every Friday, and to get on and join my watch list, and you get this all for free. My top videos. You go to michaeljamin.com/watchlist. We'll see you there, and then you can sign up. If it gets too much for you once a week, unsubscribe. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Go get it. There's free stuff. Go get it.
Good stuff too. Good stuff. Lots of good comments on YouTube and Instagram coming from the watch list. So
yeah.
Go engage. All right,
everyone. Thank you for listening. Until next time.
Keep riding.
Okay. Bye-bye.
This has been an episode of Screenwriters Need to Hear This with Michael Jamin and Phil Hudson. If you'd like to support this podcast, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing this podcast with someone who needs to hear today's subject. For free daily screenwriting tips, follow Michael on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Michael Jamin Writer. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Phil A. Hudson. This episode was produced by Phil Hudson and edited by Dallas Crane. Until next time, keep writing.